There are 25 villains in Insomniacs Spider-Man universe, and we're going to be ranking all of them from worst to best, from S to F. We got a lot to get through today, so let's just get straight off started with the very first villain we encounter in this series. Okay, so coming up first we have Kingpin. Now, when rating Kingpin and the whole scale of the Insomniac Spider-Man series, I think he's a very nice introduction to this entire roster of villains we encounter in this series. He's a very simple antagonist that introduces us to this world in a way that's not too intimidating. It's really nice, really well balanced. Now, when discussing Kingpin, I think he's really funny. I love the voice acting. I love how irritated he gets when Spider-Man keeps one-upping him at every small occasion. It's really fun to watch. And his boss fight is surprisingly simple and really fun and an amazing introduction to this game. The only reason I can't rate him any higher than this is we don't really get to spend much more time with him outside the intro in this game, which is a little disappointing. I would have liked to see him in future sequels, but we might see him in Spider-Man 3, who knows? But anyway, for those small reasons, I'm gonna have to put Kingpin in the C tier, which is still a great tier. Coming up next, we have Shocker. Now, Shocker is incredible. I love this incarnation of the character. He captures the essence of the comic booky, wacky character so perfectly. I love how he's this over the top. He's like a little child running around New York City, and there's some really cool boss fights where we take this guy out. And that's not to forget his amazing chase sequence where we fly across New York City in an attempt to pursue the angry Shocker. I think my only problem, though, is the way they send this character off. Now, this is an issue we're going to get to with many of the other Sinister Six villains, because the way they send these characters off aren't exactly satisfying. You kind of walk up to these tables with the main villain's gadgets or weapons on the table, and Kraven spouts some speech whether they were good or bad villains to face in combat. Which isn't exactly bad. I just think for a character like Shocker, especially with all the symbiote memes surrounding him, it would have been nice to see him in the sequel. So with that small caveat, I'm gonna have to put him in the A tier, but I still absolutely love Shocker, and I'm really glad they did him this well. Okay, coming up next we have Black Cat. Now, ooh, Black Cat. I suppose my only issue with Black Cat is I just think she's a little underused in the series. I think there's a lot more interesting ways they can take advantage of this character and can incorporate her into the stories. But for some reason, they just don't really take advantage of it that much. Like, for example, why is Miles Morales interacting with her in the sequel? It just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I think it makes more sense for Peter to talk to her. But besides that small little setback, I can't deny I love this character, and it's definitely not because she's, you know. So for those reasons, I'm gonna put her in the S tier. Coming up next, we have the Sinister Six, and we're gonna rate all of these villains individually and give them their own separate tiers. So let's start off with the Vulture. Now, I do have to say, I really do like this version of the Vulture in Insomniac's universe. I think his suit is awesome. I love his boss fight. But my only issue with him is he just doesn't really have that many scenes to shine in the game. A great example is in the Miles Morales game, where we go up against a fake holographic Vulture, which I don't know, I think that would have been a really good opportunity to incorporate Vulture into that story and have us battle him and perhaps give us more, I don't know, insight to the character, give us more reasons to care about him and his objectives and his motivations. So because of these disappointing missed opportunities, I'm gonna have to put Vulture in the D tier, but don't get me wrong, his voice acting's incredible, I love his design, but he just doesn't have that depth or screen time to make his presence as impactful as the other characters, in my opinion. Okay, so coming up next, we have Scorpion. Now, I just want to say, I do love this version of the character. I think Scorpion is so fucking cool. The way they take advantage of him and use him in psychological horror sequences in both games. However, my big issue with him is I just don't feel like we have a lot of reasons to care about him in this universe. I mean, he's literally just trying to pay off his bills, which, you know, he doesn't do, so he's just roaming around in Spider-Man 2, and even in Spider-Man 2, he only really serves just to show how powerful Kraven is as a villain, and that's pretty much it. He feels kind of wasted. And for those reasons, I'm gonna have to put Scorpion in the C tier. Coming up next, we have Rhino. Now, Rhino is a very interesting case, because this guy strangely has the most screen time out of any villain in this series, I'd say. In a grand total, he has 3 boss fights, one entire stealth sequence, a chase sequence. It's really bizarre. I don't know why Rhino has this much screen time and why they focus on this character so much, because he doesn't really have that much of a tie to any of the Spider-Men in any significant way. So for those reasons, I'm gonna put Rhino in the B tier. He's not amazing, but he's also not terrible. I really like this incarnation of the character, I just feel like he's a little overused. Okay, so we're coming up to the two big tyrants of this series now. Let's get started with Martin Lee. Now, Martin Lee is a very controversial case in the Insomniacs Spider-Man series. A lot of people like him and a lot of people, I wouldn't say hate him, but I don't necessarily like him either. I fall in the mostly like category. I absolutely love the way he's included in Spider-Man 1. I think his arc is incredible. And I do have to say, I think all of his boss fights are incredible, especially the last one towards the end of the first game. I thought it was excellent. The music, the set pieces, all of it was just incredible. I even like the train boss fight, even though a lot of people hate it. I still really enjoyed it. And there's no denying the voice actor portraying this character did a phenomenal job. It was absolutely excellent, and his boss fight in the second game is also incredible. Honestly, I can't really find a whole lot wrong with this character, but his writing just doesn't really hit that S tier level for me, so for those reasons I'm gonna put him in the A tier. So coming up next, we have Dr. Octopus. Now, this guy is probably the most well-written, well-developed, and best villain in this entire series. It's not even close. The journey we go on with this character throughout the entire first game is probably one of the best descents into madness of any character I've ever seen in fiction. It's simply incredible. I also love how in these lab sequences you can explore the area and you can pick up little notes and little audio recordings that gives us more lore and more exposition on why he goes down this path and what he's experiencing and feeling as a character. And his boss fight, well, a little underwhelming in my opinion, and maybe even a little frustrating if you're playing on the hardest difficulty. Still might not hit that S tier level gameplay I expect in a final boss, however there's no denying that this character is absolutely fantastic and by far one of my favourites in gaming history. This guy rightfully deserves the S tier plus in my category. Okay, so it's time to cover the side missions / DLC bosses of the first game, so let's just get straight off started with Tombstone. Now, Tombstone is a weird case. I don't think this is a bad villain, I don't think this is a disappointing villain, I just don't really care for Tombstone. I'm not that invested in the source material, I don't really have much experience with him in comics, and I have to say I don't think his Insomniac counterpart is that engaging or that interesting. I just think he's a little bland. He's just kind of a generic bad guy villain with an invulnerability perk. That's pretty much it. And is that a bad thing on paper? No, of course not. It's, you know, you need villains like that. It adds to the roster. I understand why he's in the game. And his boss fight, while quite fun, is just a little, you know, it's a little samey. It's a little boring. There's no unique gimmicks. It's a two-faced slog boss, which I don't really care for. So for those reasons, I'm gonna put Tombstone in the D tier. It's not awful. It's not bad or anything. It's just not particularly compelling to me personally. I got a feeling I'm going to annoy a lot of people with this one. So we have Taskmaster now, and Taskmaster is just, he's Taskmaster. Now, call me crazy, I've never been that personally invested in Taskmaster before. I don't really care about his origins, I don't really care about this character in general. I thought his side missions were obnoxious, they were obtuse, they seriously got on my nerves towards the end. I just wanted to beat the fuck out of this guy. And the fact that if he kills you in the boss fight, which if you're playing on the hardest difficulty, is gonna be quite often. He has a lot of bullshit moves he pulls out of his sleeve. That stuff can get on my nerves. That stuff can be a little annoying, and it kind of sucks that, I don't know, we don't see this character any other times in this series, so he doesn't have that potential to be fleshed out more than his kind of bland version is in the first game. So for those reasons, I'm gonna have to put Taskmaster in the D tier. I hope that doesn't frustrate people, but that's just my personal experience with this character. I honestly don't care for him or her. I just wasn't that interested, so let's just move on. Okay, so it looks like we're getting into the DLC areas now, so let's get straight off started with Hammerhead. Now, Hammerhead is actually one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. When done properly, this guy is absolutely incredible. Like, play Shattered Dimensions and watch John Diamagi. I think that's the guy who portrays him. Play that character. It's just absolutely fantastic. He has so much potential to be a ruthless, antagonizing villain that chews up the scenery and really gives you that gangster, you know, old school New Yorkan vibe. I absolutely love it. But unfortunately in the Insomniac version, they don't go with that character. They go for this goofy goober who's just, I don't know, he's not that antagonizing, he's not that scary, he's not even that intimidating. Sure, he does really sadistic evil things in his cutscenes, but compared to this, I don't know, dude, like, you just can't compare these two together at all. I prefer this so much over what we got. And the fact that in the third DLC, he turns into this weird Optimus Prime mech machine, it just doesn't make sense for the character, it doesn't work. And it's disappointing they missed the mark this much for a character that had so much potential to be so much more. I don't know. Call me disappointed, call me crazy. I don't know what the community's consensus on Hammerhead is personally, but for me, I just don't like it. I think they could have gone a much more interesting route. They should have gone the Shattered Dimensions route, but for what we got, I suppose it's passable. But in my opinion, I'm gonna put this in the E tier. This really disappointed me personally, and I wish we got something different. Oh boy, now if Keenan's watching this, man, I'll give you guys some context. When we played the game for the first time, me and my buddy Keenan, we played through the whole thing in one sitting, all the DLCs, and Screwball was a personal nuisance to me. I didn't like Screwball that much, man. She was really fucking getting on my nerves. And it only became more and more obnoxious as we got through the night and I kept dying to her fucking missions, and she has a really annoying voice, and I hate her design. I hate the fact that she takes up a DLC role. Like, look at Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery, look at this picture, look at all these villains on screen, and you choose this fucking you choose this Twitch streamer livestream girl, which, I don't know, man. It's just, why? Why did you go with Screwball for a DLC villain? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Honestly, do I even have to explain why I don't like this girl? She's going in the F tier. Fuck this woman. Okay, so that now covers Spider-Man 1. Let's get into Miles Morales with the 3 villains we have to talk about, which, you know, this game doesn't really have a whole lot of villains, which is a little weird. Let's get started with my least favorite villain in this game, Simon Krieger. Now, Simon Krieger is a very disappointing case. He's played by Troy Baker, who, if you know video games, Troy Baker is like the Tom Cruise of voice acting. He's fucking huge, and he's involved in so many projects, so many characters I've fallen in love with over the years. And the fact they gave him this generic businessman role, it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. You know how talented this actor is, give him more better material to work with. Honestly, I have nothing positive to say about this guy besides that he's voiced by Troy Baker, but the material he has isn't that good to work with in the first place, so I'm just rating the voice acting. So for those reasons alone, he's going in the F tier. Huge wasted potential. So now that we got the big stinker out the way, let's get to the other 2 villains I fucking love. The Prowler in this series is absolutely fantastic. I really like how we went with this post-Prowler who looks back on his career of crime in pity and shame. But how they treated him in this game was extremely unique. It was a really cool twist on the character that doesn't really get a whole lot of interesting depth in many stories. So for those reasons, I have to say that Prowler is an exceptional villain. It's not the best in the series, but it's by no means one of the worst. So for those reasons, I'm gonna put him in the A tier. Oh boy, we saved the best for last with Miles Morales, because the last villain we're going to talk about in this section is the Tinkerer. Now, a lot of the people in the Insomniacs Spider-Man community kind of treat this villain, I wouldn't say as a joke, but they don't really give her the respect she deserves. Which I think is kind of crazy, because the Tinkerer is honestly one of my favorite villains in the entire series. She has some of the best writing of any villain. She has one of the best scenes in the entire series, period, and she has, without question, maybe the best boss fight in the entire series. Now this, Venom, is how you do a final boss. Not this shit, but we'll get to that very soon. And that moment where she realizes what she's done and she sacrifices herself to save New York is such a powerful moment, and it's by far one of my favorites in any video game ever. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. So for those reasons, Finn, the Tinkerer, whatever you want to call her, she is going in the S tier, baby. I don't care what anyone says in the comments, she is one of my favorites by far. Okay, so that now covers all the villains in Spider-Man 1, so let's just get straight off started with the villains in Spider-Man 2. Now, coming up first, we have Sandman. Now, Sandman is probably the most memorable moment in Spider-Man 2, if you ask me. It really takes advantage of the PS5 hardware and shows us what this console is truly capable of, which is a little disappointing on the other hand, because the game doesn't really take advantage of the hardware in the same way Sandman does. In terms of the adaptation of this character, I think they portrayed him very faithfully, and the way you take this guy out is really creative, and I'm very glad I got to experience it. So for all those reasons, I'm going to put Sandman in the B tier. He offers one of the most memorable set pieces the game has to offer, and he's just a great adaptation of one of my favourite Spider-Man villains. Okay, so coming up next we have Venom. Now, I'm actually really afraid to talk about Venom because I don't exactly know what the community's consensus on this character is. I've seen so many videos on YouTube and so many videos on the internet completely dunking on this version of Venom, with people saying it's underdeveloped, it's uninteresting, boring, generic. And I've also heard a lot of people on the internet say it's really satisfying and they're very happy with the direction they took with this character and how they incorporated him into this story. Now, to avoid offending too many people, I'm gonna say I fall on the underwhelming category. I feel like this character had so much more potential to be so much more than what he was. I don't know why they went the route with this character and why they gave him the lines of dialogue he had and why they wasted Tony Todd's performance and why they made Harry Osborn Venom in the first place and why they made the boss fight so crappy. But to give Insomniac a little bit of credit, they made Venom playable. They gave him his whole ass level, which is by far the best level in the entire series. I constantly replay it. So taking in all those pros and cons, I'm gonna put Venom in the C tier. I think that's very fair. Coming up next, we have Cletus Kassidy. Now, Cletus Kassidy is by far one of the most successful villains in this game. It's so refreshing to see a character like Cletus Kassidy, because a lot of the characters in Spider-Man 2 are just broken or influenced villains who don't really want to be what they're doing in the first place. However, Cletus offers us some much needed variety in this story because he's pure fucking evil. He wants to end the world and fulfill a prophecy of chaos and carnage, and I fucking love it. However, I can't rate Cletus anything higher than a B tier because this character just simply isn't finished in this universe yet. We still have to see Carnage, and oh boy am I excited. Coming up next, we have one of my favorite villains in Spider-Man lore, and that's the Lizard. Now, if you know me personally, you'll know that the Lizard is by far my most favorite Spider-Man villain. It's been so since I was a child, a teenager, and an adult. I fucking love the Lizard. In Spider-Man 2, they decided to go with a more influenced and broken path for Curt Connors to follow because he doesn't really want to be the Lizard in the first place. I mean, Kraven literally injects him with a enhanced serum of the Lizard formula, which turns him into this giant fucking dinosaur reptilian monster. However, the most disappointing aspect of this character is the fact that he doesn't really have an ending. He kind of gets freaked out by Peter, and then Peter apologizes later in the story, and that's pretty much it. That's all we get from Curt Connors, which is a little disappointing. I wish we got more of a send-off for such a prominent character in this story. However, despite those cons, there's still no denying this is a phenomenal adaptation of the character, so I'm gonna put Lizard in the B tier. Up next, we have Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio. Now, to be perfectly honest, I was never fond of Mysterio. I didn't really like him in No Way Home, and I wasn't really that big of a fan of him in the comics either. However, this game really won me over because it presents Mysterio in a much more interesting way compared to what we usually see with this character. This is a man who's been traumatized by his past and wants to reinvent himself in society, but unfortunately can't due to his reputation of being a monster among the city. I think the way they handle that character's journey in the story story is strangely marvelous, considering it's better than basically every other villain send-off we get in this game, and yes, that's including Kraven. And dude, come on, this boss fight is by far one of the best the game has to offer, and it's not even close. It offers a taste of that aerial combat we don't really get to see with any other boss in this game, because every other boss is on foot, whereas Mysterio flies around in the skies and you have to zip towards him to take him out. It's a really fun twist and adds some great variety. So for those reasons alone, I'm gonna put Mysterio in the A tier. Oh boy, Scream. What do I say about Scream? Now, Scream's an interesting case. I've actually had quite an interesting journey with this boss fight and this character in general. After playing through this game multiple times and facing off against Scream multiple times, I can say this is by far one of my favorites the game has to offer. Scream has such a versatile moveset that tests every area of skill you've possessed through all three of these games, and it offers a really great challenge a lot of the other bosses don't really offer. Now, there's not really a whole lot to comment on with Scream besides the boss fight, so for those reasons alone, I'm gonna put her in the C tier, which is a perfectly fine place for her. I was really conflicted if I should put Wraith on the list because she's technically not really a villain, she's more of an anti-hero, but to be thorough, I'm gonna put her on the list anyway. Now, Wraith is an interesting case because on one hand, I'm a little disappointed because, I don't know, I just expected something a little more from this character considering how well she was built up in the Silver Lining DLC. But on the other hand, she has a really fun boss and offers a really cool twist on this story. Like, for example, how a villain like Cletus Kassidy, the sadistic, lunatic murderer cult leader, should be dealt with. It created a lot of really fun and enjoyable story moments, which I'm really glad I got to see. The only reason I won't rank her any higher, though, is her suit. Her suit is just whack, it's crappy, it looks like shit, I really fucking don't like her suit at all. So for those reasons, I'm gonna put Wraith in the C tier. Coming up next, we have Kraven the Hunter. Now, I've had a love-hate relationship with this character for the better part of 6 months. I think his design is phenomenal, his voice acting is incredible, and he has, without question, one of the most impactful deaths I've ever seen in a video game. I still get chills thinking about what I saw that day. But, in retrospect, I don't know. I don't know why I don't think he's an S tier or even an A tier, but there's something about the way he's written that feels really one note. All his dialogue basically says the same thing. He doesn't really have any interesting things to say or provide to the game until the literal last 2 levels he's in. But despite the novelties of the character, I just don't think he's that particularly compelling. I think his motivations are kind of weak and a little underdeveloped. Cool, he wants to be a Giga-Chan that wants to die a warrior's death. But when you compare that to Martin Lee and Dr. Octopus's descent into villainy and madness, it just doesn't really hold up. It feels a little one note and uninspired compared to these fantastic stories we got to see before this. So with all those pros and all those cons, I'm gonna have to put Kraven in the B tier. I'm sorry I ranked you this low, bud, but I hope you enjoyed the warrior's death. Okay, so coming up last, we have Black Suit Spider-Man. Now, if you know this channel, this guy is actually the thing that blew this channel up and got me over 1,000 subs, so thanks, Spidey. Now, has my opinion on the Black Suit Spider-Man changed since the game came out? No, it has not. I fucking love this character, man. I simply come back to Spider-Man 2 just to see this arc, in the same way I played the first game for Dr. Octopus. Everything about the Black Suit symbiote in this game is fun. The levels are fun, the boss fights are fucking amazing and they're the best in this series, probably, I don't know, maybe. The chases are fun, the cutscenes are addictive, they are interesting. I go on YouTube and I rewatch these cutscenes over and over again because I just love seeing Black Suit Spider-Man kick fucking ass. And the resolution of this arc, with Peter finally building the courage to rid himself of this addiction, this venom, it's fucking perfect. And watching a broken Peter Parker walk into the Oscorp lab and deny his own friend a cure for his sickness is so fucking good. Sure, Venom wasn't explored with a certain level of depth I expect in a story like this, but a Black Suit Spider-Man absolutely was. It was the selling point of the marketing, and by far did they nail the landing. So for all those reasons, I'm gonna put Black Suit Spider-Man in the S tier, baby. This is by far one of the best this series has to offer. Okay guys, that's the end of the video. I am very tired. I'm sorry if I'm stuttering through the recording. Talking for an hour and a half really fucks you up, man. It gets really tiring and I just want to go to bed and play Spider-Man 2 New Game Plus, which is exactly what I'm gonna do. So if you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed the rankings, the tier list, please slap that notification bell, slap that subscribe, and stay tuned for more content in the future. I'm really grateful for everything you guys have done for the channel. Thank you for getting me to 1,000 subs. I greatly appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a tremendous and fantastical day. Take care and I'll see you in the next one.